I've never seen someone classify a therapy dog as a property value issue. Not in Florida, not once. And trust me, I've seen some insane HOA complaints.
For a second, I honestly thought the lawyer was messing with me. Because 3 weeks earlier, if someone had told me an HOA could declare war on a therapy dog, I would have laughed in their face. Actually, I did laugh, right up until I opened the second page. But before that, none of this felt real. It started on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. Just a normal afternoon. Cooper was next to me like always. And before anyone says it, no, he wasn't barking, he wasn't running loose, he wasn't digging holes, he wasn't attacking children. He was sleeping. That's it, sleeping. Then I heard the mailbox outside. Metal. Heavy. That sound immediately annoyed me. Not because of the letter, but because lately every envelope coming from the HOA felt like opening a hospital bill. You already know you're not gonna like what's inside. I opened it standing in my kitchen, didn't even sit down. And right at the top, official violation notice. My first thought, grass, mailbox, trash bins, something stupid. Then I saw the subject line, animal-related community concern. I remember staring at that sentence for a few seconds. Not because I was worried, but because I genuinely had no idea what it meant. Community concern? What concern? I kept reading. That was my mistake. Multiple residents have expressed concern regarding the visual impact of your animal on overall community standards. I stopped. Read it again. Then one more time, because my brain literally refused to process what I was reading. Visual impact. Visual impact. I looked at Cooper, still asleep. Didn't move, didn't care. Meanwhile, according to somebody in my neighborhood, this dog had apparently become a threat to civilization. I actually laughed out loud, like a real laugh, because the alternative was asking myself a much worse question. Who writes this stuff? Then I reached page 2, and that laugh disappeared instantly. Because underneath the complaint, there was a fine. $75 per day. Not a warning, not a reminder, daily. I felt my stomach drop. Because suddenly it wasn't funny anymore. Now somebody wasn't complaining, somebody wanted something. And at the bottom, buried under tiny gray text, there was one sentence. Continued non-compliance may result in accelerated enforcement action. I stared at it. Accelerated enforcement? I had absolutely no idea what that meant, but it sounded expensive and legal, which somehow felt worse. Then Cooper walked over, rested his head against my leg, and that's when I noticed something I somehow missed. The report included dates, specific times, 8:14 a.m., 2:37 p.m., 6:51 p.m., again. My stomach dropped for a second time, because suddenly one question hit me. Who the hell had been watching us? The next morning, I called the HOA office. Not because I was panicking. Not yet. I just wanted someone to tell me there had been a mistake. Wrong address, wrong resident, wrong dog, something, anything. The woman who answered sounded exhausted before I even finished saying hello. I explained the violation notice, the therapy dog, the complaint. Silence. Keyboard sounds, paper moving. Then, oh. That was it. Just, oh. And I remember immediately hating that response. Because people don't say oh like that when they're surprised. They say it when they already know what's happening. I asked, can somebody explain what visual impact means? Silence. Pause. Then, community standards. I waited, but nothing else came. No explanation, no rule number, no section, just community standards. I asked where exactly I could find that policy. Typing, Pause. Then, you should have received a resident handbook. I had. Actually, I knew exactly where it was. Kitchen drawer, buried under coupons and takeout menus like every HOA handbook in America. I pulled it out, sat down, and opened it. At first, I expected this to take 30 seconds. Dogs, pets, restrictions, done. Instead, I found mailbox rules, holiday decoration rules, fence colors, pool hours, garbage placement, and enough lawn regulations to legally qualify as psychological warfare. But therapy dogs? Nothing. Visual impact? Nothing. Community appearance standards? Nothing. I went through it again, slower this time. Nothing. That was the moment something shifted, because now I wasn't annoyed anymore. Now I was irritated. Because if a rule exists, why can't I find it? So I called again. Different person, same office. I explained everything a second time. Silence. Then, that may fall under supplemental resolutions. Supplemental resolutions? I had absolutely no idea what that meant. So I asked, "Can you email me a copy?" Pause. Long pause. Then, "We'll have to locate it." Locate it. Not, "I'll send it," not, "1 second." Locate it. That word sat in my head all afternoon, because suddenly one question became impossible to ignore. How do you enforce a rule before finding the rule? About an hour later, I received an HOA email, subject Community Compliance Reminder. No name, no signature, no explanation. Just a generic paragraph reminding residents that maintaining visual harmony protected neighborhood value. That phrase again, visual harmony. At that point, I started feeling angry. Not scared, angry. Because suddenly every sentence sounded fake. Like somebody trying very hard to sound official without actually saying anything. Then something weird happened. Completely by accident. I was outside with Cooper later that evening when my neighbor walked past. Nice guy, quiet, the kind of person who waves but never really talks. He looked down at Cooper, then looked at me and said, "So, you got one too?" I frowned. Got what? Silence. Immediate silence. Wrong question. You could see it happen on his face, like he realized he'd said something he wasn't supposed to. Then he laughed. Fake laugh. Quick, too quick. "Nothing, never mind," and kept walking. That bothered me more than the violation notice, because now I had a new problem. Not the dog, not the fine, not Susan. Someone else already knew. And somehow, I was the last person finding out. That night, I opened the handbook one more time. Not because I expected answers. Honestly, I don't even know why. Maybe I was angry. Maybe I wanted proof I wasn't losing my mind. Then I noticed something. 2 pages near the back. Numbered correctly. But one section suddenly jumped. No title, no reference, nothing. Like something had been removed. And for the first time, I stopped thinking this was a stupid HOA complaint. Because stupid people don't hide paperwork. I couldn't stop thinking about what my neighborhood said. Not the whole conversation, just one word. Two. I hated that word because it meant I wasn't first. And if I wasn't first, then somebody already knew what was happening. Maybe several people did. And somehow I was the last person finding out. That thought stayed in my head all night. The next morning, I told myself I was overreacting. HOAs are weird, neighborhoods are weird, people complain about stupid things. Maybe that was it. Maybe somebody really hated dogs. Maybe somebody hated Cooper. Fine. People are insane. Case closed. That lasted about 15 minutes, because the moment Cooper and I stepped outside, he stopped. Completely stopped. Not distracted, not curious, stopped. I looked down. He wasn't moving, wasn't pulling, wasn't looking at me. He was staring across the street. And dogs do this weird thing sometimes. They notice something before you do. You don't think much about it until they keep staring. Then suddenly, you're staring too. Across the road, parked near the curb, sat a dark SUV. And immediately I felt something I hated. Recognition. Not certainty. Recognition. Like hearing a song you haven't heard in years, your brain knows before you do. And I realized I'd seen that SUV before. Not enough to consciously remember it, enough that it already felt familiar. Which somehow felt worse. I immediately started arguing with myself. Because once your brain gets nervous, everything starts looking suspicious. Parked car? Suspicious. Guy walking dog? Suspicious. Mailbox? Probably suspicious too. So I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Okay, amazing. Now we're scared of vehicles. Cooper didn't move. Not even a little. Still staring, still pressing closer against my leg. And that immediately bothered me. Because Cooper wasn't nervous. Ever. Vacuum cleaner? Mortal enemy. Thunder? No problem. Random strangers? No problem. But now, something had his attention. Something I couldn't understand. Then my phone buzzed. HOA email. Again. I remember feeling annoyed before I even opened it, because suddenly every notification from them felt personal. Subject? Community observation follow-up. I stared at that word. Observation. Not complaint, not report. Observation. And suddenly, my stomach dropped, because those pages flashed through my head again. The dates, the notes, the entries. Not the times, the pattern. And one thought hit me so hard, I actually stopped walking. Wait, how exactly were they observing us? I opened the email. 3 sentences, that's it. Cold, generic, no name, no signature. Just, residents may continue documenting ongoing concerns for compliance purposes. I read that sentence again, then one more time. Then I looked back across the street. SUV still there. No movement, no driver, nothing. And for the first time since this started, I felt something much worse than confusion. Because confusion eventually turns into answers. This felt different. This felt like realizing everyone else had already read a script, except me. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. My neighbor. Same guy from yesterday. He looked at Cooper, then looked across the street, and immediately looked away. I saw it. That tiny reaction. Tiny, but real. I asked, "Do you know whose SUV that is?" Silence. Too long, way too long. Then, "No idea." Fake smile. Immediate smile. Wrong smile. Then he nodded once and walked away, fast. Didn't even finish the conversation, nothing, just gone. And that's when something hit me. Not about Cooper, not about Susan, not about HOA rules. Something much simpler. Nobody acted confused. Nobody acted surprised. Nobody asked questions. They acted like people trying very hard not to say something. And suddenly, for the first time, I didn't care about finding the rule anymore. I wanted to know who had been watching us. I waited 2 more days before calling a lawyer. Not because I felt better, because I kept trying to convince myself this whole thing was stupid. Honestly, Say it out loud. Therapy dog, property values, community appearance standards. It sounded ridiculous, like 3 unrelated phrases somebody accidentally pushed together. And for a while, I actually believed that. Until another letter arrived. Then another. Not because they looked threatening, because they didn't. That was the weird part. No clear instructions, no do this and the violation goes away, no process, no explanation, just warnings, more notices, more vague language, more pressure. And slowly, something started bothering me. Because if somebody finds you, normally they tell you how to fix the problem. Move the trash can, paint the fence, cut the grass, whatever. But this? What exactly was I supposed to do? Hide Cooper? Move him? Pretend he didn't exist? For the first time, I stopped asking, how do I solve this? And started asking, wait, what exactly do they want? Because suddenly, it didn't feel like compliance. It felt like pressure. And pressure felt different. Pressure meant somebody wanted movement. Somebody wanted a reaction. Somebody wanted me uncomfortable. That was the moment. I finally made the call.
I've never seen someone classify a therapy dog as a property value issue. Not in Florida, not once. I've seen pet complaints, I've seen noise complaints, I've seen HOA boards completely lose their minds. But this? No. Did you file accommodation paperwork? Under fair housing protections, reasonable accommodation changes this entire conversation. So unless somebody here forgot federal law, something isn't right.
I remember saying absolutely nothing, because that wasn't what I expected. I expected, don't worry, or this happens constantly, not something isn't right. That sentence sat in my head all afternoon, because suddenly everything felt different. The handbook, the missing section, the weird phone calls, the neighbor, the SUV, the observation emails. For days, I kept treating every weird thing separately. Like random pieces, random events, random nonsense. But suddenly, for the first time, it felt connected. Then the lawyer asked, "Can you send me every notice they've mailed you?" Simple question, normal question, should have been easy. But the second he asked, my stomach dropped. Because suddenly I remembered something. The letters weren't identical. Not completely. Same format, same logo, same language. But small things changed. Tiny things. Things I ignored because I thought I was imagining them. Different wording, different references, different phrases. Nothing huge, just enough to bother you. Like hearing a sentence repeated slightly differently every time. So I pulled everything out. Kitchen table, counter, drawer, every paper, every envelope, everything. And for the first time, I actually started reading them side by side. Not scanning, reading. And suddenly, I saw it. One line. Tiny line buried near the bottom. Didn't appear everywhere. Only once. Only once. I felt cold immediately. Because it said, documentation provided by community sources. Sources. Not complaints, not residents. Sources. I stared at that word. Again and again. Because suddenly, that dark SUV across the street didn't feel ridiculous anymore. And for the first time since this started, I had a thought I absolutely hated. What if somebody had been building a file on Cooper? I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was scared, because suddenly my brain wouldn't shut up. That sentence kept replaying, documentation provided by community sources. sources. Not complaints, sources. I hated that word. Because complaints happen. Complaints are normal. Neighbors complain about garbage cans, dogs, music. People complain about absolutely everything. But sources? Sources sounded organized. Sources sounded intentional. Sources sounded like somebody sitting down and deciding, let's keep track of this. And the more I thought about it, the less ridiculous that SUV felt. The next morning, I called the HOA office again. Honestly, I wasn't even expecting answers anymore. I just wanted somebody to accidentally say something stupid, something useful, anything. Susan answered, first time. And immediately I knew it was Susan because she had one of those voices, calm, too calm, like customer service mixed with elementary school principal energy. I explained everything. The lawyer, the notices, the phrase community sources. Silence. Long silence. Then, residents are allowed to submit observations. Observations, that word again, not complaints, observations. I said, okay, observations of what exactly? Pause, paper moving. Then, behavior patterns. I remember blinking, just blinking, because for a second my brain genuinely stopped. Behavior patterns? I looked down at Cooper, sleeping, again, of course, because apparently this dog spent 90% of his life asleep while everyone around him slowly lost their minds. I asked, behavior patterns? Silence. Then, community concerns may include ongoing activity observations. Activity observations, behavior patterns, community sources. I suddenly realized something. Nobody said anything directly, ever. Every sentence felt designed in a lab. Words without meaning, answers without answers, like talking to somebody hiding behind legal bubble wrap. Then Susan said, if residents repeatedly report concerns, the board reviews the pattern. 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 That word hit me immediately, because suddenly I remembered the pages. Different entries, different dates, different wording. Not one complaint, not one person, a pattern. And for the first time, I asked the question I should have asked days earlier. How many reports are there? Silence. Long silence. Long enough I actually pulled my phone away and checked whether the call disconnected. Then, I don't have that information available, which immediately meant she did. People only say that when they absolutely have the information and don't want to give it. Then she said something weird, really weird, something so small I almost missed it. You can submit a records request if you'd like to review community submissions. Review community submissions? Not complaint, submissions. Different word, again. I wrote it down immediately because at this point, I trusted exactly nobody. We hung up, and I remember sitting there staring at Cooper. Because suddenly I wasn't angry anymore, I wasn't confused. I was trying to understand scale. Because there is a huge difference between one angry neighbor and a file. One complaint? Annoying. 5 complaints? Weird. A system? Different story. That afternoon, I submitted the request. Honestly, I expected nothing. Maybe an email, maybe paperwork, maybe another delay. Instead, 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no voicemail, nothing. Then again, unknown number, again. No message, no voicemail, nothing. I ignored it. 3rd time, same thing. Then finally, a text message. No name, no introduction. Just stop asking questions. Silence. That was it. 3 words. No explanation, no signature, nothing. I stared at the screen, then looked at Cooper, then back at the phone, and for the very first time, I felt actual fear. Not HOA fear, not paperwork fear. Real fear. Because fines are one thing, rules are one thing, neighborhood politics, fine. But random messages? No. Absolutely not. And immediately my brain started doing what brains do. Maybe wrong number, maybe joke, maybe coincidence, maybe... No. Because deep down, I already knew. Because suddenly every weird thing connected. The SUV, the neighbor, observation, community sources, behavior patterns. Patterns. I looked outside, across the street, and my stomach dropped instantly. Because the SUV was back. Same spot, same side of the road, engine off, no movement, nothing. And sitting there in complete silence, I suddenly realized something that made me feel sick. I still had no idea who was watching us. But whoever it was, they already knew I was looking back. The records request arrived 3 days later. Not by email, physical envelope. Thick. Way too thick. I remember staring at it for a second before opening it because, deep down, I already knew something was wrong. Normal complaints don't arrive in packets. Normal complaints don't need folders. Normal complaints don't feel heavy. This did. I opened it at the kitchen table, Cooper beside me. Completely relaxed, completely unaware that apparently he'd become public enemy number 1. At first, it looked normal. Submission forms, printed pages, generic HOA paperwork. Nothing shocking, nothing dramatic. Until I noticed something. The handwriting. Different styles, different pens, different formats, different people. I stopped. Because suddenly, that word came back. Pattern. Not complaint. Pattern. I kept reading, and immediately things started getting weird. One report, dog remained outside longer than expected. Another, animal appears to walk same route repeatedly. Another, observed unusual emotional dependency behavior. I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because what does that even mean? Emotional dependency behavior? He's a therapy dog. That is literally his job. I kept flipping pages, then stopped again. Because one page wasn't a complaint. It was a photo. Cooper, sitting beside me, front yard, across the street angle. Not close, long distance, but unmistakably us. My stomach dropped because suddenly I wasn't reading complaints anymore. I was looking at surveillance. I turned the page, another photo. Different day, different angle. Another. Not dozens, not hundreds. Enough. Enough that somebody had clearly spent time doing this. Real time. Actual effort. And suddenly, all I could think was, who has this much free time? Then I found something clipped near the back. Meeting agenda, board review discussion, printed transcript summary, and highlighted in yellow, animal observation review. Observation. Again. Always observation, never complaint, never concern, observation. I started reading. At first it looked boring. Committee language, policy language, nothing. Then one sentence stopped me completely. Behavior documentation indicates ongoing pattern consistency. Pattern consistency. I stared at it. Because suddenly I realized something. Nobody was talking about barking. Nobody mentioned aggression. Nobody mentioned damage. Nobody mentioned danger. They weren't documenting problems. They were documenting existence. Walks, presence, routine. Then I saw another page attached behind it. And for a second, I genuinely thought it had been included by accident. Because at the top, meeting audio transcription. Audio? I frowned immediately because nobody had mentioned recordings. Nobody. I started reading. The transcript reads, "Chairperson, how many submissions are we at?" Then the response, "Including visual observations?" And then, "Chairperson again, 34. I froze. 34. Not 1, not 3. 34. I looked at Cooper, sleeping. Again. 34. How in the hell does someone collect 34 reports on a dog? Then another line. Do we believe accommodation status changes enforcement? Pause. Voice. Not if appearance concerns continue. Silence. I read that sentence again, slowly. Then one more time. Because suddenly, I couldn't breathe for a second. Accommodation. They knew. They knew from the beginning. The lawyer, the paperwork, everything they already knew. And suddenly every weird interaction made sense. Susan, the handbook, the missing section, the fake language, the observation emails. Because they weren't trying to figure out if Cooper qualified, they already knew. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't incompetence. This wasn't HOA stupidity. And honestly, that realization scared me way more, because mistakes eventually stop. People stop mistakes. But systems keep going. Then I reached the last page. Single page, short note, no explanation, no signature, just continue documentation. That's it. No context, no names, nothing. Continue documentation. I stared at it, then looked outside, across the street, and my stomach dropped instantly. Because parked beside the curb, same place as before, same side of the road, was the SUV. Again. Except this time, someone was sitting inside, watching the house. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. 11! Not an hour, not some dramatic courtroom showdown, 11 minutes! And somehow, those 11 minutes felt longer than everything that happened before. I almost didn't go. Honestly, I kept telling myself it was pointless. Because what exactly was I expecting? An apology? Susan standing up saying, "Wow, huge misunderstanding." No, people don't spend weeks building files by accident. People don't collect 34 reports by accident. People don't accidentally create systems. So I went because I wanted one thing. Not justice, not revenge, answers. That was it. The room was smaller than I expected. Long table, cheap chairs, coffee smell, papers everywhere, and Susan. Of course, Susan. She smiled immediately. That same smile, the one people use when they're trying to look calm before a disaster. I sat down, put the folder on the table, and didn't say anything. Nobody did. Silence. Long silence. Then Susan spoke first. "We're happy you came." Pause. "This is simply an effort to resolve ongoing community concerns." Community concerns. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because after weeks, After everything, we were still doing this. Still using fake language, still pretending. I looked at Susan, then looked at the board members. And something immediately felt strange. Nobody looked confident. Nobody. Nobody looked angry. Nobody looked annoyed. They looked nervous. Actually nervous. And suddenly, I realized something. For weeks, I was the uncomfortable person. Me. But now, something had changed. Susan kept talking. Words, policies, standards, visual impact, community harmony, same nonsense, same script. And for the first time, I stopped listening. Because suddenly I noticed something sitting beside her. A folder. Thin folder, yellow tab, single word. Cooper. I stared at it immediately. And for a second, Susan noticed. Tiny reaction, tiny but real. Then she moved her hand, covered it just slightly. Too late. Way too late. Because now I knew. There really was a file. An actual file. Not theory, not paranoia, not imagination. Real.
The attorney beside me finally spoke. First words in almost 10 minutes. Calm voice, very calm. Too calm. Can we clarify something? You acknowledged accommodation paperwork, correct?
Silence. Immediate silence. No community standards, no visual impact, nothing. Susan looked down. The board member looked down. Somebody adjusted papers. Another person looked toward the wall, and suddenly, nobody wanted to talk anymore. My attorney asked again, "The fair housing accommodation?" Pause. Susan nodded. Small nod, tiny nod. But enough. Enough. And suddenly, my brain stopped. Because for a second, I genuinely thought I misunderstood. No, wait. Because accommodation paperwork meant one thing only. They knew. They knew. Weeks ago. Before reports, before notices, before fines, before observation logs, they knew. Silence. Absolute silence. My attorney said, "So you knew Cooper qualified?" Pause. Long pause. Long enough that I remember hearing the air conditioning. Long enough I remember hearing papers moving. Long enough I remember hearing my own heartbeat. Then Susan looked down and quietly said, "We knew accommodation existed." Silence. I stared at her. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, because suddenly, after 6 weeks, 34 reports, letters, documentation, SUVs, files, observation logs, they admitted it. Not accidentally, not indirectly, admitted it. And then Susan said one last thing, one thing I'll probably remember forever. She said, "We still had appearance concerns." Silence. Absolute silence. I looked at Cooper sleeping beside my chair, then looked back at Susan. Because suddenly, for the first time since this started, I understood everything. Not the rules, not the system, not Susan. Everything. They knew from day one, and they kept documenting Cooper